if people had a non-stop awareness of time, a full awareness of time, to have that kind of memory, you would have to also have a time memory, that you would have to know what time has done to you, what time has done to every circumstance that you have ever been in, and based on that, a fair assumption, way beyond linear and logical, but a fair assumption, nay, almost a certainty, that life left to its own devices, what time will do in the future, what it might do to something that seems to be a problem with you right now. It would drastically change not only one's consciousness, but it would be changing behavior. It would be the most immediate way to affect not only how one acts, but how one thinks of acting. If it was fully realized, whatever it is I mean by that right now, if it was fully realized, time would reveal that presently everything is correct, no matter who you are, where you are, no matter what the present seemed to be. If you had the awareness of time, and now I wish I had the visual display that Ben went to all the trouble to fix up, and I told him I wouldn't use tonight. We'll use it some other night. Of what time is, I was going to give you a visual stroke with a paintbrush. But at any rate, if you had the kind of fullness, a complete awareness of what time was, you would see for yourself that there is a perfect correctness. Forgetting ideas about true, false, or whether things are properly arranged right now, you would see the correctness of what was going on right now. You would see time then to become the kind of esurient consumer of all mere truth, not correctness, but everything that seems to fall within the realm of truth, which also, of course, engulfs the untruth. It would be the ultimate black hole. It would be that into which energy goes, human energy, 3D energy goes, never to be seen again in your lifetime. 1, 2, 3. You think. You think, because you have no sense of time. And it flies out another black hole, the same thing, perhaps a different time element involved, a horizontal time element, perhaps different apparent figures involved, and here it is again coming out of the other side of the universe, the same situation, and 3D people go, ooh, oh my God, I'm going to die. I can't stand it. What a shock. Who would have ever thought this would happen? Time thought that would happen. Time knew that would happen. There is a way in which, listen quickly because this is so good that for a long time I decided, contemplated spending weeks, months, years on this, and since it was so pregnant, I decided, nah, maybe just 2 or 3 minutes. And that is that ordinary consciousness can be seen in a correct way. It can be seen as being the means to make life thinkable. Now, there are other things, of course, that I can say that could be seen as the possible uses and purposes that life has for human consciousness, and I have mentioned many in the past. But one right now that would be pertinent would be consciousness operating in such a way that it makes humans be able to think time, not have a continuing partnership arrangement with other dimensions to where they're continually aware of the cogent power of time, but it would be that men even have the idea of time, that they could even conjure up the word time. If looked at from a certain, not improper view, you could see that that alone would suffice for yellow circuit human consciousness. If I have enough time and I don't change my mind, there are 1 or 2 other things I may throw in before this evening is out. But on that one basis, you could see, if you had that kind of expanded, at least 3.5D view, that alone would justify, and you could begin to see why, would justify humans being, quote, conscious. Was simply so they could think about time. Do I have to remind everybody that if we did not have time, what ordinary people would miss? were it not for the ordinary conception of time, now not a fully continual awareness of time, but were it not for the ordinary knowledge and talk of time, think about the many things that would no longer be possible for humans, which obviously, based upon the demand and the use by life, are necessary, but look at all the things that you could not do. I told you. All right, suffer. Be surprised. Be bored. Be able to say, who would have ever expected that? And next week say, I knew that would happen. It requires that there be that kind of disjointed consciousness now involved with time. Let me stretch it from life's perhaps ordinary uses of time and ask you this. Start off speaking about ordinary people. Would any plans really be plans at all as long as they are based on what seems to be present conditions? Now, if you consult a dictionary and you consult your own yellow circuit operating at ordinary speed, it would apparently be a non sequitur question. How else could you plan? That would be one of the purposes of human consciousness, to be able to see what facilities, what abilities, what materials you had right now, and then to make some plans for the morrow. But I ask you again, the word plan, if it is all based upon extant prevailing conditions, conditions that you know about right now, you and whoever else involved, but you, it's conditions that you know about now, and if your plans are dependent upon that, I'm asking you, what kind of plans is that? Is that actually plans? Encouraged by this great response I'm receiving, I'll go ahead and tell you that from a 4D view, that is no plans at all. None. How about the many times, or the several times even, that I have given you as a task or a thinking task about what to do with this publicly if and when the day comes, to come up with at least mind game plans of what we might do. And sometimes I've gone back and I've encouraged you people, without being pessimistic, to look at it on the basis of how hard it is to think of something new. That if I wait 6 months and say, all right, what could we do to start doing something more directly publicly than Evotech, and forget everything, the previous plans. Think up something brand new. As qualified as you people are, individually and collectively, as intelligent, thanks to your own ancestors, think up something new. And you can go off and you can get a brain hernia and you come back with what? All right, this time, forget putting and gluing wings on a pig. Let's try this. Something brand new, we will glue fins on a pig. That is not plans. And part of these little episodes and would-be tasks that I have given was to get you to try and see some of that, or as I have pointed out in the past, if one of the first times you're going to really gasp is when you realize how hard it is to think of anything that you have never thought about. That is one of the first gasping moments. Forget seeing spirits flying through the air and Houdini and Jonathan Swift and everyone resurrecting themselves. It's when you see that this very thing that I thought I loved, in many of your cases, some of you love your guts and your sex organs a little bit more, which is all right. We have to have different types of people in here. But all of you should by now have quite specific and personal taste of the singular flavor and joy of having what seems to be a brand new thought or picture. And it almost seems as though that you got it all by yourself. But there is a difficulty in trying to plan something new, and there is the near impossibility of seeing how nearly impossible it is to think of anything new. Now, I could describe, once again, a real revolutionist in another way, and say a real revolutionist would be one that would be perhaps 500 years ahead of his time, or 5 minutes, and the result is the same. If anything was going to be classified as a real plan, it would have to be, I suggest to you most strongly, it would have to be thrust at least 5 minutes into the future. It could not be based upon current circumstance. I do not care how perceptive you believe you are. I don't care that if at the time, compared to those around you, you had ostensibly insight that no one else had. In other words, you apparently had a better reconnoitering of the lay of the land, materially and otherwise, and that you could inject possibilities into these would-be plans that no one else had foreseen. But it still doesn't matter. I ask you, since one or two you almost heard it, I'll ask it a third time. Can you see that that's not really plans if it's still based upon present conditions? I didn't bring a definition. I hadn't looked up plan in 50 years, if I ever looked it up. But I believe if I had a dictionary, I believe I could argue that it doesn't even meet a horizontal definition of plan. People just assume it does. Because in the 3D world, the only way you can make plans is you have to look at the current situation and then, of course, ask, where do we go from here? You don't go from here. Revolutionary activity can't go from here. If you're going to operate on that basis, you're going to be left always on the basis of a reformation. You're always trying to swap one habit for another. You're always expecting that sooner or later there's going to be overnight success. You're expecting that there is cause and effect. You'll live out 30, 40, maybe 70, God forbid, 80 years on this long, long road. And you never understand why, remember, that 1 and 2 makes 10. Never. You can curse, you can drink, you can drug, you can peek, you can get under bed, you can ask somebody else, they can agree with you. You can find out that you are part of the people, you are part of the majority who say something is amiss, that I put 1 and 2 together, and I'll be damned if it ever comes out the predictable number. And yet, something in my genes, something even in our sciences says that there is a logical sequence. But what seems to go awry in the affairs of how I perceive life to operate and the way in which my fellow man, if they're ordinary, seem to perceive it to operate. Does anyone remember, a long time ago, I believe, that I let Kyroots steal it from me? All right. I'll steal it from Kyroot. For those of you, I don't give anybody the blues. I've kept up this pretense so long, I'm afraid if I ever really insinuate there was any direct connection between me and Kyroots, that some of you, I can just see it on your faces at times, that you'd go, damn, first God, then Santa Claus, and now, so. But you remember a story once. It was about 2 kids who were out chasing horses trying to get a loop around their heads. And one of the kids had continuing success and no one didn't seem to. And the kid that seemed to be the more proficient of the 2 told the other one, said, well, I found out the trick is, don't chase the horse, try to run where he's going to be. And wait. Does anybody see that would be the only way that your activity could be classified as being a plan? But to take circumstances as they are, all you can do is talk about a possible reformation. And then you're still faced with this, if you knew anything about time, that 1 and 2, day in and day out, keeps giving every number in the world except 3. And yet, people continue to say, all right, here's what we'll do. All right, here's the problem. Let's all talk about the problem, make sure we understand the problem, which normally will take 2 or 3 days or run through a committee. without one or two committees, and then you just get that stated. And then you say, all right, now the question is, what are we going to do? And of course, the answer is nothing. You would have to be dealing on the basis of trying to run where the things are going to be. And if you think that's easy to predict, then I suggest that you stay tuned here this evening, because I was going to touch on such fascinating subjects as prophetic books, Gene Dixon, Dial Your Lucky Number, and lest you laugh too much, human belief in the future. Before I get to the heart of tonight's sermon, message, comments. One or two things came out in the last 2 weeks when I was running through those imaginary rules for an imaginary pack of folks. And one or two that I want to mention a little more specifically. If you engage in things that you feel, that's all we're concerned about, that you feel chemically. Of course, it will get electrified, it will get up into thought. But if you deal in things that you feel are deceitful and treacherous, you are diluting the blood and you are starving the upper circuits. It should be that you have another small sub-motto of don't machinate. You should not be doing anything that to you is conniving. It is, I guess weird, we'll cover it, that over several weeks I'd comment on this and then decided to point it out more tonight, and then just tonight apparently I may have to do away with two of my favorite people in this group based upon this. Two of my absolute favorites up until an hour ago. As long as you feel the treachery, you are starving yourself and you're no longer involved with any sort of real effort. Instead of a sub-motto, what you should remember is this, is morality is molecular. Morality is not religious. Morality is not yellow circuit. Morality is not spiritual. If there wasn't the word morality that everybody uses, I wouldn't even bother to use it. But all of you at the ordinary level believe you know what it means. You believe that you know what ordinary people believe that they think it means. But it is molecular. There is a reason that all of these religions, even these humanistic philosophies, even perhaps just your grandmother, who might have been, God bless her, a down-home atheist, tell one another and themselves, I should not machinate. Of course, I can't believe that your grandmother would do such a thing anyway. I should not connive. I should not be deceitful. I should not gossip. I should not do anything that if somebody else saw me do it that I know, that I'd go, uh-oh. But it is not spiritual. It is not psychological. It is molecular. That is the basis of all morality. Of course, that's the basis for everything, if you're going to push it that far, kid. And it's the basis that only a few people, now and then, can see. Because it does not have the right grease. It is not a properly lubricated sheath in which an average or an ordinary person's intelligence can get screwed. They cannot accept it. They cannot see it. Life has not had any reason to bring it out. And of course, as I have admitted to you, from a certain viewpoint, there is no particular reason that a few of you should be able to see it. Because life has not yet made any widespread move to display any deep need for large numbers of people to realize this. from certain views, you can see what appears to be a gradual shifting. And you might believe that there are now larger numbers of people, or some people, that you could go out and talk to them, either as an audience or a one-on-one, and you could try to get some people to realize that things that have heretofore been referred to as spiritual, psychological, are always molecular. If nothing else, if I send you people out, where'd they go in the Bible? Greece, Mesopotamia. That'd be fun. See, some of you could find Mesopotamia. But at least to point out to people, say, look, I'm not trying to shake up your religion, but dig this. If God, if Allah, if Jehovah did talk to you, he would have to do it. Go back and check. You can look it up. Look under either Genesis or Casey Stengel, and you can look it up. That Moses heard. He heard the voice of God. Muhammad heard the voice of Gabriel saying, read. How did they hear it? Molecules in action. If there was a God as ordinary people believe, and he was going to communicate, he would have to do it molecularly. And then they might go for a second. Yeah, wow, that's weird. Here, have a date. No thanks, I'm married. It would have, if you had a kind of continuing time memory along with everything else, it would have a drastic effect if you would try and remember that morality is molecular. And that makes it worse for the few people that would be revolutionists. It makes it worse than you operate on the basis of your forefathers' religion, of their imagined God saying, you shouldn't be deceitful, you shouldn't talk about other people, you shouldn't do anything that you wouldn't want your neighbor, your wife, or your husband, or your best friend to know about. The gods disapprove of it. That sounds strong enough, I guess, to ordinary people. Of course, they make it stronger. And religions used to say, in fact, if you do crap like that, you're going to be sorry. We're talking serious sorry. But I'm telling you, that's nothing for the few people. The deceit, that kind of treachery, kind of machination, destroys the blood. It destroys the feeding of the higher circuits. I could carry this further and start pointing out, to use ordinary terms, how you seem to get bogged down in, quote, guilt. And having to try and cover up things you've done before by more cover-ups. And people have been talking about this as long as we've had recorded history. But as I say, they have always approached it on the basis that it was in some way a psychological malady or a spiritual danger of doing this. It is a material danger. It is a physical danger for people attempting to start their own revolution. It'll kill you. You'll stay out in the bushes. You'll freeze to death. You'll starve to death. You won't be able to keep your temperature up. The brain gets starved. You can begin to, you could blame, and you can figure out right quick whether I'm speaking allegorically or not, you can begin to blame anything stealing from the blood. Everything from alcohol to nicotine to tight pants to anger to not believing in the cellulite fairy. But it is a material reality. Something else I've already mentioned, but I want to expand on a little. One aspect that the real revolutionists would have of this apparent struggle, this allegorical struggle that I have been detailing of this real revolutionist in the land of Slobovia or the land of Fred or Mary, and the many divisions in the land, as in all lands, of ruling powers, people, institutions. And then in a few people, the would-be revolutionists. Having reminded you sufficiently of that, there would be a certain aspect, a certain way in which the real revolutionists would look at this struggle, and a certain aspect I want to specifically mention again is that he would not be expecting overnight victory. Only ordinary people expect that. That is what passes for change in life. That is what passes for contrition, conversion, enlightenment. It passes for many things. But the real revolutionist does not expect overnight victories. Comma. I could go in many directions with this, but one specifically I want to mention tonight. Instead of him and or her looking at it as being the possibility of an overnight victory, from one aspect he begins to see the struggle as the attempt for him to try and bankrupt the ruling powers by continually raising the cost of their successes. Now that is what religions, that is what all 3D information does not convey. It never has conveyed. It always seems to be talking about the impossible, the immediately impossible of directly affecting behavior. But there's a certain view, rather than looking at it on the basis that I now know so much, or I am now so angry, or I am now so moved by great cosmic forces that I'm just going to, starting first thing tomorrow, make abrupt changes in me, which only an ordinary person would say that, much less believe it. Rather than looking at it from one particular view as being I'm going to win, there is one way in which to look at it, that part of the struggle, part of my strategy is that which I seem to be struggling against, the ruling powers, that other part of the partnership that at any particular time does not seem to be the you that you like, rather than look at it on the basis that I'm going to overrun it and I'm going to overwhelm the enemy, I'm going to make every time that he apparently or she apparently succeeds, I'm going to continually increase the cost of such little victories, if you want to call them that, to the enemy. Being met with a room full of silence, I'll point out to you that a whole handful of you have had the experience of this through some of the particular tasks that I have given you, not just to the group, but some of you in particular. When apparently I just gave you some little something to do, and I said, go say this to somebody, or go act this way just for 3 hours, first thing tomorrow morning. And you came back and you went. You increased the cost that somebody apparently, someone with whom you worked, someone with whom you were acquainted, evidently you and they were in this little tango, and looked at from a so-called ordinary psychological view, they seem to have not only been tangoing with you, but almost having their way with you on the dance floor anytime they wanted to. And you finally ended up expressing to me, more or less, a feeling of fecklessness. What can I do? And I said, do so-and-so. Just do that and keep your eyes open. And that's when you came back and went, that the whole dance stopped. Something drastic happened, and it seemed to be beyond. The results, as I deemed them at the time, seemed to be out of proportion to what I did. What you did, without knowing it, was you increased the cost. Now, this is all relative, of course, and apparent. We're talking about the appearances of a 3D view. That apparently they had some influence on you that you didn't like. That they apparently would lead the dance, they apparently could call the tunes and make you jump through hoops, etc. And what you did was you increased the cost of their apparent victory to such a point, and of course they had no idea what was going on. They're just shocked. Molecularly, something happened. Energy is not running in the right direction. Somebody has dropped a peanut in the fuel line. My carburetor is full of krypton, holy water. But what you had done was you had increased the cost of their apparent victory. And rather than at times when you feel as though, I'm giving you this for mentioning it for a specific reason, times at which you feel as though this one thing, I am bogged down into it. I can't even get in the city and attack anybody. It's like I am up to my knees in some musky savanna. And I can't move. I can't find a way to attack. No matter what I try, it seems to be the same results over and over and over. Look at it this way. To increase the cost, of course, you do know that the ultimate importance is not us talking about you dealing with some harebrained boss that leans on you too strong, which we've dealt with. And plus you find out it wasn't harebrained. I resent you even saying that. But in here, that there are things that apparently keep, I don't know, coming to mind. There are things apparently that I keep, how should I put it, feeling. There are these things that seem to frighten me. What should I call them? Fears and, that kind of stuff. I can't seem to overcome them. I can't seem to fight them down. Rather than looking at it as being the attempt right now to in some way overcome the foe, how about a continuing drive to increase the cost continually for their victories? And there's a way to do it. There is a way to do it. It's the only way, from one 3D view, by to affect change instead of reform. Because if it apparently stays simply a matter of attack, be driven back, no apparent place to get a finger hole in the moat walls, then you end up feeling like, at least reform's happened. I keep leaping at the walls, and when I started this, I had 5 fingers on each hand and fingernails, and now I've lost 2 of them. Now, I hadn't had any fingernails, and this one's rubbed down to this point. There's been some change. My face stays bloody from jumping up on the wall. Every time I get up a little higher, somebody beats on my fingers with hammers and other strange instruments. So apparently something is happening, but it's not change. Change would be you have to increase the cost of them fighting back. Well, that's one way. How much time on the side of the tape? 10 minutes. Okay. Here is something even better than the first one I mentioned tonight. I have been laying some verbal and otherwise groundwork for some months now for this. And seeing as how it was a very auspicious day, I checked the calendar and it's the 17th. Plus I found out it was, September, which was enough for me. Those of you still here and those of you that will still be here when I get through with any more bloodletting, I suggest that you listen to this. It's one of these that if you hear it where I'm pointing, ties up many, 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 many things. But I am going to present it as a kind of sketched-in update of some maps. And as is often the case, I fear, and that's the only kind of fears I got the least interest in, and they are, of course, allegorical fears, but it is that it will flow so smooth that I have such a way with words at times, and slightly unusual pictures that it's just going to flow right through, and I'll see, if not a myriad of heads, a bunch will go having heard nothing. But that's the dangers of driving on Indian highways. Here it is. First, let's make it the question. Is there a difference between discussions of delivery of services and the delivery of services itself? Is there any difference? Man, individual man, and his institutions not only discuss, I can carry it this far, they promise delivery of services, never do so, and operate in a 3D view with complete impunity. Complete and total. Men can apparently discuss and substitute the discussion itself for effort. I am sneaking up on at least any of you still sitting on the edge of your seat believe that you missed it. I'm sneaking up. A person can say, boy, I am really out of shape. And it seems to be, in a certain way, the end of the matter. There seems to be no other action required or forthcoming from the person. That the enunciation of the, quote, problem seems within itself to be sufficient. Is there a difference between the discussion of delivery of services and the actual delivery itself? It is almost as though problems addressed are problems solved. Too many of you believe that what I'm saying is too simple and that you missed something. But you haven't. It's almost impossible to get a real verbal grasp on this. That's why I was trying to break it up into a handful of pieces as simply as possible. As far as 3D consciousness can see, that is, let's leave it planet Earth within the visible light spectrum for the time being, man is the only ongoing enterprise. And it is only the ongoing enterprise, man, that is wired up, that is created to pursue ongoing ventures. Now, to use the spurious, yet apparently beautifully convenient parallel comparison of man with other creatures on this planet, then I point out to you that 2D creatures, lions, tigers, dogs, hippos, deal only in results. That is, they deal only in what, based upon how I started this, they deal only in what would seem to be services delivered. Food, sex, shelter, safety, and there seems to be a kind of continuing daily finis. The lion finds food, he eats, and as far as you can see, being as astute, having 20/40 vision, watching, listening, reading books, as far as you can tell, there's been no sign that once the lion gets through eating, gives the final burp, walks away, and the jackals run, where everything's safe, the lion lays down. There's been no way, not even a good guess, not even a suspicion, that lions lay down and with some kind of yellow circuit ability dream that, boy, that was good. I hope that elk, that wildebeest, has some relatives that I can find tomorrow. Or that a hippo gets through doing it. For you people of more sophisticated views in other cities, when they get through fucking, there's no sign whatsoever that a hippo has a cigarette, says, "I'll call you tomorrow, Mama," and goes off down to the 7-Eleven store and begins to look at nudie pictures in magazines. Or to ask the female with whom he just got through cavorting and tangoing, hey, you got a sister? Or maybe even mentions menage a trois, whatever that would be in hippo talk. There is apparently a daily finis to what goes on. Relatively speaking, on this planet, that which is visible to ordinary consciousness, there is no other creature that can conceive of, that is wired up to deal with, to pursue ongoing ventures. A meal is a meal, and once it's it, that's it. A screw is a screw, and when it's over, that's it. Not completely unlike Alabama bricklayers, but that's... If they run, if it was a wildebeest running from a lion, it gets away. There is no sign. I just assure you, without me going through more stories, wildebeest do not run behind trees with other wildebeest and go, phew, boy, that scared me to death. Did you see what happened yesterday? They almost caught me. It is action going on. It is not thinking of action, and it would be the delivery of services, not the discussion of the delivery of services. Now let us go from food and sex, drugs and rock and roll, and shelter for animals and two-circuit creatures. How about the wild, wonderful world of religion, psychology, man's attempts at self-improvement, astrologies, all the so-called psychic sciences, but all the religions will lead them all up. They all deal in one thing: the discussion of the delivery of services. They never deliver, and no one notices it. But now wait, you can't attack man's institutions. All they are is a whole bunch of men. Men promise delivery of services to themselves, and of course to each other, but to themselves. And they never deliver. They're not supposed to deliver. But remember my opening question, my opening gamut at least, for a rhetorical question was, is there a difference between discussions of delivery of services and the actual delivery? Is it close enough to turn it? If you can begin to see man in a particular way, all men, as an ongoing enterprise, that is another description of their evolutionary, their malleable, their high-end position in the body of life, the purpose they're serving. If you begin to see it in that way, then you see that it is proper. Nothing's amiss. Man's not being tricked. But it is proper for him to continually be involved, to be in charge of a singular, relatively speaking, area within life on this planet. And that is, he is continually pursuing and involved with ongoing ventures. The process is the payoff. Parts of life's body, of course, operating through men and women of the past in print, remembered words, and then, of course, in you, certain people, life is spoken through, sweated through, and said, boy, religion's a crock. Everybody talks about being a good Jew, and I've never seen one. Everybody says, let's be just like Jesus and be this kind of person. Nobody does it, and etc. Philosophers, not real academic philosophers, but I guess cigar store philosophers say, humanity talks a good game. People talk like they're humane, but oh, just look at what they do, and etc. The gadflies are not the people. As I started out in this one area earlier to point out, man's institutions deals not only in discussing promises or discussions of delivery of services, they go so far as to, in essence, to promise delivery of services and never do, never have, not intended to, and on that scale, they operate with impunity. That is, no one notices. They're not supposed to notice. The declaration that I have identified, so says one person, so says life through one person. I have identified one area of a kind of problem, something we should be working on, something we should solve, something we should investigate. Once that is enunciated in a particular way at a particular time, that is the result. That is the delivery of service. Yet another way in which I can try to point in the general area for you, the ongoing venture, I mean more than I've said in the mean for you to try and expand your vision more than I pointed out in the past when I used such opposing terms, relative terms as things being nouns or verbs or things being either processes or results. I'm trying to get you to see now in a much larger area. It begins to encompass. It begins to be the map of the ants. It's as big as the picnic table itself. That the discussion, simply the enumeration, the verbalization, the promise even, the blatant promise of delivery of services serves the purpose. The services do not have to be delivered. They're not expected to be delivered. And it, again, would show I was going to try and give you several other ways to try and get your own look at it. With man, it would be such as this. It would be in the praying, not the result. If you were wired up to be an ordinary smart-ass, you could wander around the churches, synagogues, temples. You could turn on television and watch TV evangelists. You could go to little churches anywhere and you see people praying. You hear people praying. And of course everybody, you should know this by now, everybody's praying that his neighbor, his enemy, is going to do worse than he is. And in this apparently closed system, for you to do better, somebody's got to suffer. I pray that my people who have done me wrong will fall down and their nose will split open and their brains will come out. I pray I've been so good since I haven't cursed anybody in months. God, send me down, if not Janis Joplin, at least her Mercedes-Benz, because she can't use it now. Send it to me. And it never happens. Never. And you being this smart ass, you begin to wander through these churches and synagogues and said, have your prayers ever been answered? And if in some way you could wring what they call 3D truth out of somebody, they'd say no. And let's assume that nobody's ever got answered. So what? It is the process. It is the promise of delivery of services. And what can't be seen is it doesn't matter that they're not forthcoming. And don't be a real smart ass and say, well, I heard about one guy prayed for money and he hit the New York lottery. Give me a break. With man, it is the process of dieting, not a permanent weight loss. Some of you go through it or read. I guess you know that it's accepted figures. I won't argue with them. I believe it in the New York Minute. That something like 98% of people who diet put back on all the weight they lost. So what? Does that stop anybody? No. How many books right now on the New York Times top 10 of the bestseller list that are diet books? I don't know, but I'd surely guess 3 or 4. Has been for the last decade. How many people you go to their house and they're just, you can see the years of the top 10 books of diets with New York, and you say, well, what happened to that one? Oh, I tried it, it didn't work. And you look at the price, it was $14.95, and they got 10 more. And you could, if you were an ordinary smart ass, think, good grief, what kind of person is this? I thought they were pretty intelligent. You mean you keep buying the books and they don't work? You don't understand. That's right, you don't. But I'm telling you now, it is the dieting It is not the weight loss. It would be the saving up to buy the Ferrari, the Corvette. Not the actual having it. Is, as people have opined, few people throughout the history of man, all the way back to the Greeks, about, boy, it sure is a difference when you save up all your little cope checks and you save up for this big old fancy vase and you think if you had it, some of the Caesars might hear about it and come over and visit you. And I saved up for months and I sold all my slaves and I sent my wife out in the street working and I bought this vase. Now I look at it and I think, good grief, that thing's ugly. Plus, if I hadn't spent my money on that, I'd have a V8 Chariot by now. It was the saving up. It was the process, not the apparent result. If you can follow this, the 3D ultimate, of course, would be in men continually reforming their habits, that is, swapping habits, and not actually undergoing real change, which would be some kind of passing finality. That's why nobody likes a reformed blank, a reformed drunk, because they won't stop talking about it. It was the process. But now that it apparently has reached some conclusion, apparently, he won't shut up about it. But why I'm telling you he will not shut up about it is the molecular structure. It was all tied in with him, quote, being a drunk, is still in operation. There has been no change. There has been a reformation. There has been a swapping of habits. Now instead of a drunk, he's a reformed drunk. No change. If you can see from a certain view, I can point out that this is also another reason, another use and need for man's yellow circuit memory, and so that man can run plans, these ongoing ventures, from minute to minute, from day to day, from generation to generation. And if he did not have yellow circuit memory, what I'm telling you are the ongoing enterprises, the ongoing ventures, that is, the continual, non-stop promise of delivery of services, would not be in a continual necessary flow. They would stop, not only from generation to generation, which would be, in a sense, bad enough for life's health, but it could stop in you, just from minute to minute. Another aspect of, in a sense, bad enough for life's health, but it could stop in you, just from minute to minute. Another aspect of this, keeping it broken down into teeny or semi-teeny pieces, is how ordinary consciousness is wired up to feel very kindly, just by and large, as you know, all over the world, at all times, to by and large feel very kindly toward drugs, booze, collecting and shopping, notions of God, sports. And why, you might ask? All right, kid, I'm getting to that. All of these things, at some time, with some people, can appear to be, I'm not trying to be oxymoronical, but really, it appears to be a kind of passing finality. Sports contest. There are other things I could say about them closer to the feral red level. But one aspect of sports contest the man is wired up to feel favorably toward is it seems to hold out the promise of a conclusion just within reach. How many ordinary smart alecks, and we can speak of women and not have to say smart alecks, could flip on the news on your local TV or radio station and see how much time they spend saying, and here's a rundown. And they list all these teams. Toronto 7, New York 6. They go on and on. They're into Canada. Sometimes they're into Puerto Rico. And if you're not interested in that, you can think, my God, who cares? It's all over. Does anybody actually sit down besides 12-year-old kids back in the 40s and in some way keep track and to look at it and go, Toronto 7 and New York 6, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm suggesting to you at a molecular level, man is wired up to feel favorably toward things that seem to hold a promise, an appearance that there was some finality. That game, regardless of anything else in life, regardless that the Russians and the Americans are still at conference tables, machinating, conniving, debating, not over doing away with bombs and living in peace, no, debating the size of the goddamn table at which they sit. But, this afternoon, Toronto played New York. They played a full 9 innings, and the score was 7-5, Toronto. One down, many to go. So one thing got done today. They played the game. It's official. They went, they showered, and now they're all off. The players having a beer, having supper. That thing is now history. It's in the record books. I said collecting and shopping, which is, if I was going to take the approach tonight to go closer back to lower red circuit levels, we could get into them being kinds of molecular substitutes for hunting. Well, let me just point this out, that it can give a kind of finality. In years past, I used to pick on the British for doing this, being these fanatical, eccentric collectors. The one man, Lord Berry, now has what he claims to be the world's largest collection of caterpillar shells all over the world, and he spent thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. He has these cases up, and he has people in other parts of the world looking on the ground to find the little deserted houses of caterpillars and to pick them up and to mail them very carefully to them. And he has them all cross-section. Of course, in today's time, I'm sure they'd be computerized. They're people who want to collect every album that Elvis Presley ever made. That's so common for you who don't know it. There are people who are collecting albums by artists that they got no interest in. That's not the point. I own every album that Jim Reeves ever made, Hank Williams ever made. Not just here in the United States, all over the world, every country. And it becomes impossible almost. But there is some sense that I am down. Or I have every stamp that was ever printed in Bulgaria except 3. I'm that close. But there is a feeling that there is some kind of conclusion, there is some kind of finality in life that is almost within my reach. Boy, I bet you enjoy those albums. Hell, I never listened to them. But I've got, right now, I've got so-and-so. To my knowledge, there are only 2 albums, one from Argentina, and another one that seemed to be a bootleg that they did in Russia. And once I get those 2, if nothing else pops up, the wild duck will be dead. There will be some conclusion to my life. There will be some feeling of finality. Another aspect, if you'll listen quick, that some of you should get something from, since plenty of smart alecks throughout history, up until today, Life uses a few here and there to point out the follies of these fine ministers and gurus and other people that are locked into a certain situation. And some of you had the potential to get up close enough to this to get singed. In this situation where the process itself becomes the payoff, you have people that would apparently be the swamis, the gurus, just run-of-the-mill ministers, freelance, jackleg, shade tree ministers. I could include other groups, but this will make the point, I believe, most saliently to those of you who can hear it at all. They, in a sense, mechanically accept the fact that now they know it all. Of course, they know it all because, listen, it says here in the Bible, and I've memorized the Bible. I can argue the Bible as well as anybody. I now in some way know it all. I must know it all. I started a church, and now I got a nice flock. But having accepted, as they were wired up to do, having accepted the fact, having now believed the fact that, all right, now I know it all. I know it enough to be a minister. I know it enough to be a swami. I know it enough to be a metaphysical teacher of some kind. I know it. I know it. Part of the proof is I've talked to a few people, and I tell them weird things. I tell them some of the weird things I've thought, and they didn't laugh. They brought in some friends. And now I never even think about it anymore. I never expect anybody to laugh. I just say it. And I just turn to people and I say, yeah, I know. I know how it is with you people who are Geminis. Well, I meant, of course, well, yeah, I knew you weren't a Gemini. I meant a Taurus. Well, what are you? Nobody seems to notice anymore. Once this situation is well in place, these people are no longer an ongoing venture. And the way in which they get, the way in which life has an experience, a sensation of growth, time and again, gets down to this, is then their sensation of any kind of ongoing venture is more funds and more followers. A continuing process of raising money. We got to have more money. Of course, the story right quick is to spread the word. But that's the promise of services, to be delivered, not delivered. Because the people in the church, they don't say, well, what word? If there's a word, why the hell didn't we get it? Nobody asked. Give us more money so that more people can get the word. And nobody ever says, wait a minute. I'll give somebody to help spread the word once I get the word. I've been coming to this church now for 2 years, 20 years. What do you mean that we need to spread the word? Give me the word. And then I'll consider back contributing. Once they're in the position, and I bring this up as always not to cast any humorous light on ministers because it has application to you individually. But once there is the feeling that I know it all, now I know it all. Now I know it enough that I could tell somebody else, I could lead somebody else. Without you actually knowing the secret, you have ceased to be an ongoing enterprise. And you might as well be a minister. And there is nothing at all amiss from some ordinary 3D view that you may have to look upon life and think, well, every time I've read a book by some guy and it had some effect on me and I thought he knew something, and next time I hear about him, if I hear about him again, he has now moved to Southern California. And you have to sell everything you had, and you have to give him the money. He has people on street corners selling whatever they're selling, and it's continual, gimme, 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 gimme. More money, we've got to have more people. Boy, what a disappointment. That proves he's a fraud. Yeah. No such thing as a fraud. The sensation then on that molecular level of any kind of growth just comes down to the easily available more funds, more followers. Because the person is no longer an ongoing enterprise. But if you'll listen real quick, in the 3D world, there is justice again. Because it's only people who are no longer an ongoing enterprise. It's only institutions, big churches, the Catholic Church, any religion. It is only once they cease to be, if they ever were, an ongoing enterprise of any real potential. It is only then on the 3D level that they have any magnetic attraction. If the so-called leader, the teacher, the center of it, and the people involved, if we stretch it a little further, if they are an ongoing enterprise, you would have this difficulty. If you heard something about them, or even if they put out some word about, come join us sometimes, and you went there, you would feel like that you had been thrown into a barrel of well-oiled snakes. You feel like you're trying to do the backstroke in warm Jell-O. What in the world is going on here? And everybody would be like, well, all right, come on, you people, tell me. Okay, all right, no problem. Are you trying to hide something? Nope. All right, tell me what's going on. I may like it. I get the sensation I might like it. What is it? Would you believe this? Would you try this? Would you listen to this? The people, capital T, capital P, the ordinary world is not run as would be viewed from a 3D vantage point. In the institutions, religions, sciences, soft sciences, are not run on the basis of them still being ongoing enterprises. They have to apparently have reached the goal. The religions, they in some way have been revealed. The Muslims say Muhammad was the seal of Allah, the proof. The rest of them built up to it. The Jews, the Christians, everybody else, they did all right. But now Muhammad, he got it. They told him, this is it. This will do until they call us all home. Or to Oklahoma City, whichever is worse. That this will do. This is the final word. Then it has an attraction. Then it has an ongoing purpose in life. Then it continues to discuss, even promise, ongoing ventures and promises services to be delivered which are never delivered and no one notices. Back to my question. Is there a difference between discussions of services to be delivered and the actual delivery of services? Are they one and the same? If they are one and the same, then I ask you this. When I tell you to give you the task of planning what might be possible to do. If you understood this, why not go ahead and announce heroic intentions? Regardless of any personal feeling you might have of potential success or otherwise. Why not? I was going to let that be the coda for that part, but based upon that reaction, let me point out to you that from one very real view, what many of you have been through, when I'd give you the task about think about or write me what would be a kind of intro to a Veda Mecum if we had one. What would be a kind of introductory outline that you would suggest I present or have you present to people off the street about what this might be about? All of you, just think back. It's not an attack. You got to be big boys and girls and face up to the correctness of what has happened. All of you are very careful. Let's don't overdo this. Try and be reasonable. Let's don't be like these wild-eyed proselytizers on street corners. Nah, listen, we're intelligent. And it's obvious that you thought at one time I was fairly intelligent. And this information is really on the basis of kind of data that is new. So we don't have to put on headdresses and wear robes, play funny instruments other than the accordion. To attract attention, we'll be reasonable, we'll be logical, we'll be intelligent. Really? Do you believe, just after these few minutes, do you really believe still, at least until we break up and you get out and get some fresh air and realize you've been hypnotized again, do you really believe that if I said, all right, we're going to start doing something specifically public besides Evotech, and I wrote up what was going in the papers or going on TV, that you just made heroic claims. If you don't like my terms, how about outlandish claims? No pussyfooting around like mind control or meditation techniques about this helps some people, or if you come in and you learn our techniques to meditate or to do this or to do some kind of yoga, that it seems to help a certain percentage of. To make absolutely heroic, unequivocal claims about what this will do, the absolute unconditional promises of services wanted. Just show up. No, it might take once or twice, but we're not even going to that. Just be here. Just start coming here if what you want is fill in the blank. You want eternal happiness? Give me a hard one. Well, shit. Dealing with children. Come on up here. Be here on time. Better be here early to get a seat. Because anybody in intelligence, of course, is going to be here. Do you think, well, I still got you slightly hypnotized, that there would be a riot? Once you got through, that somebody said, wait a minute, you told me if I came here that I'd be rich, that I'd be happy forever. If you begin to see there is a way specifically beyond my opening rhetorical question, this is very, very tricky, and it is very, very correct. It is a place where additional dimensions are running right through 3D worlds, 3D consciousness, and that which seems to be totally, forever ironic. It seems to be forever self-contradictory, self-destructive. The people, certain people, the gadflies that life still has within its own system, of saying, uh-oh. All that notwithstanding is the continual promise of services to be delivered, and that is the service. It's the promise of it. It can't be otherwise. If the service got delivered, that would be the end of the ongoing venture. That would be the end of the ongoing enterprise man. If indeed it was life's purpose, if somewhere in life's consciousness it said what humanity needs for my own benefit is a thing, I'm going to call it religion. And I'm going to have morality, and I'm going to try to get their molecules operating in a way that'll be beneficial for me, and I'm going to give them stories, I'm going to make them dream that spirits from somewhere else have talked to them, super molecular beings, to do this and to do that. If that's all there was, then life would have done that to man. In any religion, it doesn't matter what, pick out any religion, pick out the oldest one we can find, not much more than mythology, warmed over. Mythology with at least sandals on, and that would have been the religion, because the services would have been delivered to whatever the message was. That Zeus and other gods either created the universe or the universe created them, but anyway, they're here and they're in charge, and they said, don't cross them or you'll get yours. And humanity went, Jesus is beautiful. Why didn't I see it? That's it, no doubt about it. And that would have been the end of it, right? And according to all religions, everybody lived in peace and happiness. And you would never covet your neighbor's rutabagas or his ass or his neighbor's ass, and you wouldn't lie and cheat. You would be moral. Your molecules would have been frozen in the position that life said it needed right then, and that would have been it. There would be no such thing as change at all. There would be no such thing as the yellow circuit. There would be no ongoing enterprise. The service would have been delivered. That is not the nature of life. And try and note right quick, this is not limited in some way to religion. I'm just picking out the most blatant example, or it should be. Science. All of human activity is dealing on the basis of services promised to be delivered. And they are never delivered. Never, never, never. Because the discussion, / sometimes promise even, of the services to be delivered is the service to be delivered. That's it. And if you ever see that, as they used to say in biblical times, you will be sorely amazed. Some of you could even be sorely sore that I have been, lo, these many decades, so supremely doltish, so extraordinarily dumb. The delivery of services, you can see, is the discussion of the delivery of services. The process is the payoff in one human's lifetime. Problems are addressed or problems solved. Of course, they're not solved. But my example, and I believe enough of you heard, is somebody can say, God, boy, I've been eating too much. I'm going to have to lose some weight. Really, I've got to. You know what I mean? Somebody around will go, yeah, me too. Whew. Hey, hon, bring us another pitcher of beer over here. There's nothing funny going on. The people are not idiots. They are, on the contrary, a delightful, a necessary, ongoing, open-ended enterprise within life's body. And they are involved themselves with ongoing ventures. Next week, perhaps, they all meet there the same week after bowling. One of his neighbors says, you know, you're talking about you're out of shape. Jesus, I've had to throw away all my clothes. And 2 or 3 of them are listening, and everybody goes, yeah. 2 more pitchers of beer. The apparent addressing of the problem was all that was necessary. It is the promise. Do you hear me? It is the discussion of services to be delivered. What they're inferring is, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to get more exercise. All forms of so-called self-improvement. It's not by any means limited to alcohol consumption or weight control, but all forms of self-improvement. It is not the result. It has not been some way the services get actually delivered. In many, many cases, it is simply the enunciation of the, quote, problem. That's it. Nothing else to be done. I know this can slip by and apparently be either too simplistic or you believe it was so complex that you didn't hear it. Listen to life. Listen to the sounds humanity is making in print, in the newspaper, from all the institutions, be they ivy-covered buildings, be they research and development buildings, be they the halls of Congress, be they the temples of religion, be they the neighborhood bar. The message is, from life's own secret Wall Street, the message is a continuing, a non-stop one of a discussion, nay, oftentimes the promise of, services to be delivered. The services are never delivered because that is not the point. No one notices it because the service to be delivered was the discussion of services to be delivered. That is the grease, that is the proper noise that an open-ended and ongoing enterprise makes. There can be no period. Your period is to die and become worm food. But there can be no period right now, obviously, for humanity. Life needs it. As far as you can see in 3D consciousness, we are the only creatures that we can see thus far that have changed and that have expanded in ways that even push the limits of 3D perspective. We are the only creatures that can not only act, we can think of acting. We can apparently plan and plot. But it is all tied to the promise of services to be delivered sans any set service. And everyone else, if it's pointed out to them, which it is in other ways, find this to be highly irritating, worthy of a letter to the editors, worthy to be at least pissed for a few seconds. To remind you what a drag life is, or at least how it is when you're surrounded by dumbasses like everybody else. The services to be delivered are the promises being made. That is the service. And you are the lowest You're at the lowest common denominator of life's ordinary critics to believe that in some way the churches have gone astray. Politics has been taken over by Colonel and Mrs. Boondoggle, and no one is looking out for our interest. I'm surrounded by Philistines, by thieves. Everybody promises a good game until they're in office, and then they try and pick my pocket again. The church always says it's out for my best interest, and all they want is my money. My father used to say, listen, this is for your own good. You believe. People are wired up to believe at the ordinary level that services discussed to be delivered should be delivered if it's pointed out to them. At the other times it's not pointed out, no one notices. No one calls down the wrath of the great logic God. And there's a reason why. The services to be delivered are the discussions and the promises of services to be delivered. You look at what you would call advertising all the way from that crude level to the history of the Catholic Church, the history of any nationalistic movement, the history of anything, what seems to be the battle cry of all the isms, all the nationalistic, chauvinistic, jingoistic feelings that humanity has, sexual feelings, racial feelings, everything that passes for being immoral, despicable, prejudicial. It is all one great song. And the song is promises of services to be delivered. And that is the service to be delivered. If it were not, no one would move, no one would be alive. One or two ups with tentacles to the last couple of weeks. You should make it a specific attempt, everyone, at least to listen to me right now and to try to use it, to see that it is possible to give another person much, much more pleasure by words than any amount of cold cash. It is possible also to inflict singular, non-biodegradable injury on people through the molecular use of words. Now, regardless of how imperfect they are for conveying any extraordinary data, to convey anything outside the limits of 3D consciousness. And besides that, I seem to poke as much fun as words as I do the Pope and rabbis. You should not despise words, and you should not underestimate their power. The real revolutionist simply understands the cogency of words, and he would treat them with all due respect, because apparently I poke lots of fun and show you their gross imperfections, how anything that can be verbalized is always incomplete. That's between you and me. At all ordinary levels, at least in our part of the world, you'd think, hey, if we start talking about big bucks, we're talking about making somebody happy. But I wasn't being poetic when I started this paragraph. All you got to do is think a second, you know this. People, quite intelligent people, people you know, people you may be living with, sexually involved with, your family, blood kin, strangers even. This is a fact that people do not consider. A few words, just a few, you can give more pleasure to somebody than if you cleaned out your pocket with money right then to a stranger or to someone you know and gave them everything you had, maybe a considerable amount. And the pleasure is lasting. The words words. You can say a few kind words to someone who has just finally gone in debt and arranged mortgages enough to buy a new Ferrari. Months later, even hours later, even that far, when they're no longer as enthralled by it as they were, that the car is now just a piece of metal that costs $170,000. When they see you, they may remember the words when you first saw the car, an hour after they got it, and the words you said to them, those words now in their memory, in their yellow circuits, that they can conjure back up, that will run back up when they see you, that now may give them more real pleasure than owning that piece of stuff does. Words, one or two words. There is a power to it, and that you people, especially amongst yourselves, should be first off aware of. And you should be aware of it among people outside the group. Strangers, but people that you consider on a friendly basis outside us here, your family. Just think about that. People do not. It is a literal fact. It is not poetic flim-flam. That it's quite easy to give another human being, a reasonable, intelligent human being, more pleasure with a few words than it is if you reach in your pocket and pull out several $100,000 or several $100s or thousands of dollars. They could get more lasting pleasure out of 2 or 3 words. But they can also endure, remember, and continue to carry a singular pain, worse than you could ever give them by kicking them in the shins. More than any, simply a red circuit. Pain that you could give is through a few words. Two more things in 5 minutes. Electrified leftovers. Feelings, chemicals that you let get electrified, you should never carry over to the next day. It is like leftover food. It is very unstable and it is dangerous. It is, as they say in the nutritional academic confines in Alabama, it's real bad to spoil. It's real bad to get bad overnight. And once you have had negative chemical reactions, I know what you people call emotions, you should bend every possible effort to look at them as being electrified leftovers, and don't carry them over to tomorrow, because once they're electrified now, they're in your yellow circuit memory, and you think you've been hurt today, and you get in the morning and you remember, yeah, I still hurt. In fact, I got to go to bed now, but I'm not through thinking about how I've been hurt. I'll pick it up in the morning. Maybe, in fact, I'll dream some new ways to get revenge in ways you can't get caught, or something. Anyway, I got to get to sleep. I'll still be mad in the morning. There's no doubt about that. I'll still be hurt. That's bad enough for trying to start your own personal revolution. That's bad enough, but it specifically, the reason I'm going into this, it has a more dangerous potential to become toxic when it's left out overnight, when you pick it back up the next day. The last thing was about families. It comes up again and again, and I say things myself, apparently without any encouragement or questions from you people, but then periodically questions come up, periodically things happen in your life that I become aware of even if you don't ask me. In fact, some of you, I know, are even frightened at times. I hear about things that have happened, and you'll just let it out to me. You'll make a comment, and you won't actually ask me for my comment, or even worse, AV, advice. Because you just know that I'm in some way going to say something on the basis of, if it gets that bad, you're going to have to cut your losses and walk away from it. But it's my own family. That's why I do not talk about it verbally. It is the epitome, verbally, of harshness. How can any reasonable person, who even seems at least humane, say that a person could finally walk away from their own children, their own mother, their own father? It can't be said. I'm not even saying it. You just thought I was kind of saying it backhandedly. I'm not. You can't say that to people, not to ordinary people. You cannot say that to 3D hearing. The molecules do not fit right, and I've told you over and over that there is a kind of hands-off respect at the very least you've got to give your blood kin, and specifically your parents. But there's also something else. And I've never told any of you to do it, and I doubt that I ever would, except under very extreme circumstance. You'd have to be close to really taking off. But there are extreme circumstances that if you were a real revolutionist, if you weren't simply a recruit, even a would-be recruit, the time could very likely come that you would walk away from your own blood kin. And it can't be explained, and I won't defend it. And in fact, the way I put it like that in words is not true. I didn't actually say that. The price, what it amounts to, is the price of the inevitable and the price of the imaginary. And ordinary people will pay the imaginary price. They got to. It is the promise of relief. It is an ongoing enterprise. The price of the inevitable is to walk. The price of the inevitable is to be able, of course, is what you can't do. That's why I don't tell you to do it. Is to be able to not only turn your back and walk away, but forget it. I use families as the most harsh example right here at the end, but that is true, of course, with whatever relations you have. Ordinary people in all relationships apparently are suffering to some degree. There are conflicts, people have harsh words, etc., etc. But the price being paid is the imaginary. The price being paid is to continue to help fuel an ongoing enterprise with a swift cut, a clean cut, to being able to not only forgive and forget, as other people imagine, which would be an ongoing enterprise, but to forgive, forget, and then forget that you forgave and forgot. You turn and walk away, and you can't ever find your way back. You turn and walk away, and somebody, this is not the way it happens, but somebody either out there or somebody in your own partnership said, hey, boy, how'd you just turn away and walk away from that? If this kind of thing happened, your answer would be, what? Not a game, not a pretext. There is no end to paying imaginary prices, and it can be true with your family. Blood kin. Once you recognize the inevitable price, you can pay it. I guess that was enigmatic to most of you for me to end in a circular sounding loquaciousness, but believe it or not, there was some reality, some pragmatic reality, some correctness in what I was telling you. Believe it or not. That's what I love about living in this country, is you can believe it or not. Whereas if you live in Bulgaria, it's a matter of believe it or not, or believe it or not. But
And Kyroots said, I just can't seem to help myself. I have brought yet another several pages from that ostensibly ancient book of unpredictable wisdom someone might try and live by, our semi-old friends, the UFNs, the unidentified flying nevers.
Never stay overnight in a village whose only Sheraton uses hyenas for guest towels.
Never ask directions unless you're absolutely lost. And even then, don't believe them.
Never take no for an answer unless the correct answer is no. Or, unless the question was, do I have to die now and give it all away?
Never try to teach anybody anything you actually know.
Never discuss your travel plans with a cop or your portfolios with an appliance salesman.
Never write about serious matters to people with flippant eyes.
Never try to lead while dancing with the Secretary of Bad News and Death. Or try to dip the Minister of Sewers.
Never trust your first impression unless it's the only one you seem to have.
Never take the special of the day unless it's you.
Never go through cycles when you can go through spirals.
Never go out in the elements unless they're good ones like zinc, argon, lithium, and like that.
Never, even in an emergency, should you use a boa constrictor as a necktie. And a corollary, never try to use a scorpion as a means of personal identification.
Never do your confessional at a church named Our Lady of Perpetual Gossip.
Never be a good sport unless your boss is watching, or you're real tired and just don't care.
Never actually agree to anything.
Never accept psychiatric care from a doctor whose academic title appears to be Grand Rap Master.
Never let a mid-level IRS agent lead you in prayer. Or anywhere else for that matter.
Never escape by the skin of your teeth unless it's from a
No.
molar,
Mole.
molar.
Yeah.
Molar?
Yeah. All right. Never escape by the skin of your teeth unless it's from a molar moel.
Never have a hearty laugh when the joke's on you.
Never let anyone's alleged brother-in-law act as your official fashion coordinator.
Never patch a child's raincoat with pancake batter.
Never act on a hunch unless tipped off by a bent thespian.
Never give any visible notice to a shot heard round the world unless it's aimed in your direction.
Never laugh at your superiors no matter what, at least not out loud.
Never pay more than $1,000 for any piece of jewelry whose primary fashion statement seems centered around tin foil.
Never offer to buy a gun that's pointed at you.
Never challenge a groggy taxi driver by asking, "Do you even know where the hell you are?"
Never speak to a child during puberty.
Never use recycled figs.
Never ask a German to prove it.
Never give as good as you get unless it may cause you to get even better stuff next time round.
Never ask a short, surly waiter, "Do you know who the hell I am?"
Never pay extra for batteries, and never put tab A into slot B.
Never, after the age of 50, still expect your father to get you out of this one.
Never gladly return anything you rightfully found or stole.
Never ask a disoriented social worker, "Do you know who the hell you are?"
Never pray to a God you can't see.
Never ask a nude, though armed, choir director, "Do you know who the hell anybody is?"
Never look up a word you don't already know.
Never waste your time on most stuff.
Never talk to a God who won't talk back.
Never return anyone's call, and I mean anyone's.
Never give the time of day to anyone who can't do you any good.
Never bother to look up the dress of anyone named Guido.
Never bring on a fresh pitcher with the bases loaded and your brother not looking so hot himself.
Never attempt to board a Belgian bus with a loaded kielbasa.
Never buy scalped tickets to a hanging.
Never laugh at another's sad story until out of their earshot.
Never put all your ducks in a row unless they're temporarily replacing the Rockettes, or will be part of a 12-tone interlude.
Never apply a full court press except to a full court suit or dress.
We're running out of time on the audio tape to tell you a lot. One, I got a question for you, something you can do over the next week. I'll try to, now you don't have to write this down. Just, this is semi-facetious, except, by God, once I thought about it, it's the truth. And it's this. What one precept, one piece of ritual, what else do you call things in religions? Things that they believe and do. Huh? Observation. Dogma. What one thing, listen to me. There's one, and nobody ever thought about it. What one ritualistic observation, let's put it that way, would ensure a brand new religion success. Just one thing. You said, this is one of our ritualistic observations. You wouldn't have to go any further. I mean, nobody say, "All right, never mind, where do I sign up?" One thing. If I don't lose my mind or lose my place, I'll answer it next week. But it's one thing. It's not all that weird, but nobody ever thought about it. And it would absolutely, I guarantee you, assure the success of any new religion. Just that one thing. People